Hi, I'm Nick Gillespie with Reason TV, and I'm here with Matt Welch. We are at the Philadelphia, the Wells Fargo Convention Center Arena in Philadelphia, where the Democratic National Convention is. Excuse me, it's a little bit early in Philadelphia. But the most important thing is we are here not with the Democratic Party nominee, but with the Libertarian Party nominee for president, Governor Gary Johnson, a two-term former Republican governor of New Mexico who is now cracking. Gary, what are your latest poll numbers, and how do they make you feel?
Well, I think the consensus number right now is 10 plus, and they make me feel really good. We're launching a campaign 15 by the 15th. So
to get to 15%, and if you get to 15% in a number of national polls, you are included in the debate.
We are included in the debates, and I saw last week, I don't know if it was true or not, but I heard the projection that there will be more viewership for the first presidential debate than the Super Bowl.
Holy cow!
Yeah, there's no way that you can get elected president without being in that game.
You caught some of the speech last night from President Obama. He had a great line in there about how Americans don't look to be ruled, which is great if he had governed that way and if Democrats would govern that way. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between these sort of, as Drew Carey put it at the fundraiser in L.A., the kind of daddy state republicanism of Donald Trump and the mommy state sort of Democrat liberalism of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama?
Well, I've never had issue with what Barack Obama says. I've always said that it's music. It's wonderful to listen to. It's just that the reality doesn't match up with the rhetoric. And Hillary Clinton, I think at the end of the day that it is a mommy state, that it's more government. Government will be the solution to all of our ills, and that's going to cost more money. So taxes are going to go up, and she's been the architect of our foreign policy that really has us intervening in situations that if we didn't intervene, situations better, not necessarily, but certainly not worse.
That was one of the really odd disjunctures, I think, last night when they were talking about foreign policy and all their successes. They didn't mention things like Libya as a success. They didn't talk about the failure of the past 15 years of Republican and Democratic foreign policy or drone strikes, and it was particularly galling for me, and I don't know if you felt this way, when they would bring out the parents of slain soldiers who were thanking the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton by extension for keeping their kids safe or doing right by the world. It just seemed to me to be completely an internal conversation where they were pretending, it was almost as if they had to follow Bush's foreign policy and were taking no responsibility for where we are now.
What I was really heartened by is several days ago, a poll was done among active military personnel that had Johnson at 39%, Trump at 31%, Hillary at 20%.
What do you think explains that?
I'd like to think it would have to do with, gosh, this is the guy that if we're going to be called into duty, what we signed up for, that he will judiciously use that power, that it will be in defense of this country, that it'll be as a result of being attacked.
We're going to be taking your questions, so please type them up, and we'll be
send them in on the Facebook comments, and we will get to them shortly.
Bernie Sanders created a unity moment, or at least tried to. Some of the revolutionaries did not decide to necessarily go along. They've been booing and heckling for a while. As part of his accommodation with Hillary Clinton here, he dropped any mention in his speech of foreign policy, of legalizing marijuana, of the drug war writ large, of surveillance, all of these things. Can you characterize what Bernie Sanders is minus those issues?
Well, minus those. So first of all, I happen to agree with Bernie on all those issues and have been actively trying to promote all those issues. I just question whether or not people really believe that government can achieve income equality. Income equality, Peter taking from Paul, that's an equation that Peter just loves. And it doesn't work. Are Bernie Sanders supporters really looking perhaps, though, for opportunity equality? And I think that government can create opportunity equality, having been governor of New Mexico. Every single piece of legislation that I viewed was from the standpoint of, is this going to make things better? So trade right now, the TPP. I'm a skeptic when it comes to TPP, but I've just had way too many people that I care about that have been advising me, namely Cato Institute, say that, look, it may have its faults, but it definitely advances the ball of free trade. So here it is. Bill Weld and myself, we're the only candidates that are supporting free trade. We're going to be the only candidates that are going to be able to stand up and point out that free trade is the opposite from crony capitalism. And I think that effectively, politically, most Americans view crony capitalism and free trade as a compass needle that points in the same direction, when in fact they are opposites.
We have our first question from Toph Barnes.
Can you just
Toph Barnes, excuse me. I guess it's Topher, Toph or Topher. Can you describe how your platform is good for voters that describe themselves as Democratic or conservative?
Well, keep government out of my pocketbook, keep government out of the bedroom, and like most Americans, how about I'm skeptical when it comes to our military interventions, that they have made the world less safe, not more safe, and you can't make up what has happened in Syria and Libya. Not intentional, but Obama and Clinton go in and support the opposition in both of those countries, and in both of those countries the opposition is allied with ISIS. We wipe out the opposition gets wiped out, the arms go to ISIS. Well, not intentional, but it's what happened and you can't make it up.
I hear a lot of, or some complaints among conservatives who don't like Trump and consider themselves to be at least semi-libertarian, that you're not trying to woo them enough, that you're not nodding in their direction. What's your response to that?
Well, that if Clinton or Trump, either one is elected, the polarity between Democrats and Republicans is going to even get greater. Neither side is going to get along with one another. What if you elected a couple of libertarians, former Republican governors that served in heavily blue states, that are going to appoint both Republicans and Democrats, all with libertarian leanings? Which of those scenarios has the best chance of actually succeeding? Those two governors in the middle calling out both sides to come and deal with the issues that we're facing? I think looking at that objectively, you could make the case for those two former governors.
Can I ask, because with social conservatives, and we're getting to more questions in just a second, a lot of times with social conservatives, the real sticking point is abortion. You believe in a woman's right to choice and to have an abortion. Talk about but you consider yourself a moderate on that issue. Explain your position.
Well, by moderate, the law of the land is Casey versus Planned Parenthood, and I hate to state my own views on abortion, but they happen to mirror the law of the land exactly. And my views, after I learned the law of the land, Casey versus Planned Parenthood, a woman has the right to have an abortion up to the point, this is the Supreme Court of the United States talking now, a woman has the right to an abortion up to viability of the fetus, and the Supreme Court of the United States has defined viability of the fetus as the ability to sustain the life of the fetus outside of the womb, even if by artificial means. I am not looking to change the law of the land, but I think in that context, women have the right, absolutely have the right.
Do you favor this? This was a huge issue a year and a half ago, and it'll be again. What about public funding for abortions? Do you believe in that, or is that not important to you?
Well, I do believe in that. I do believe, from a libertarian standpoint, that we ought to be able to pick and choose with regard to our funding for war. And that if we were able to do that, I think public policy would be a lot more in line with public view. But that's not possible. So the problem is, Republicans talk about smaller government, and guess what they offer up? Abolishing Planned Parenthood. Well, come on, that doesn't work. Bill Weld and myself were pledging to submit a balanced budget within the first 100 days. A balanced budget would be a 20% reduction in all of federal spending, that would be a 20% reduction in Planned Parenthood along with everything else.
Another question here from Greg Simonet. Do you intend to stop the drug war via enforcing no drug laws or seeking decriminalizing legislation, or are you only seeking to legalize marijuana?
Well, my stance on the drug war is the same as it was in 1999 when I was the highest elected official in the country to call for legalizing marijuana. I think we are going to legalize marijuana. President of the United States can deschedule marijuana as a Class 1 narcotic. President of the United States can just deschedule it completely. I'm believing that Obama will do that going out the door. But marijuana is going to remain a state's issue just like it was with alcohol, just like there are dry counties in the United States with regard to alcohol. The same thing will exist when it comes to marijuana. But I think that when we legalize marijuana, and I think California is going to vote to legalize marijuana in November, I see that as a real tipping point. I think that after California does that, I think 20 states will just legislate it overnight.
What about other drugs?
I'm not advocating the legalization of any other drugs, but when we legalize marijuana, this country is going to come to a quantum leap of understanding drugs and drug abuse, and it's going to start with looking at drugs first as a health issue rather than a criminal justice issue.
We've got Ross Woodward saying, when you say you believe in open borders, what exactly do you mean? Would you let in any immigrant or those that have skills that America needs?
Well, I've never used the term open borders. What I've said is that we should make it as easy as possible to get a work visa, have a moving line coming across the border. So make it easy for Border Patrol to identify an illegal crossing that right now is being skewed by people that are just coming across to get jobs. A work visa should entail a background check and a Social Security card so that applicable taxes get paid. 11 million undocumented workers, for the most part, has everything to do with the fact that you can't get across the border to take jobs that U.S. citizens don't want, and these are just hard-working people that are looking to advance their families.
So you're basically saying anybody who comes here who passes a background check, meaning they probably don't have communicable diseases or a criminal record, they can come here and try and find work.
Try and find work and get government out of the business of quotas. There'll either be work or there won't be work. Really underreported right now. There are fewer illegal crossings than ever before. This year, like 300,000. That's at a many multi-year low. An untold story right now is the fact that Obama has broken up or sent back 22 million heads of household in this country, something that I would not do as president.
Just to press on immigration for a while, because it's both a flashpoint issue in this election and it's something that really separates the rhetoric of the Democrats. You know, the Democrats here are saying they're pro-immigrant, they'll never break up families, but they have Obama as the biggest deporter-in-chief in all time. Trump is openly hostile to immigration, and conservative Republicans say he's weak on immigration. Your stance on immigration is the most progressive or the most liberal. What is it about the idea of immigrants coming here that scares people so much?
Well, let me point out, and you guys probably read it, the Wharton School of Business 3 days ago, Wall Street Journal came out with an analysis, 3 scenarios: limiting immigration, what effect would that have on the economy? Allowing for high-skilled workers only to come into the country, what effect would that have on the economy? And then a 50% increase in immigration, what effect would that have? Well, there would be a negative effect on the economy by restricting immigration. There would have a slightly positive impact by allowing high-skilled workers. There would have a big positive benefit by allowing for a 50% increase in immigration. So what scares people? What scares people is this notion that they are murderers and rapists, when in fact they are more law-abiding than U.S. citizens. And I don't want to diminish in any way illegal immigrants that have committed horrible crime. I don't want to diminish that at all, but statistically, less crime than U.S. citizens. I think people believe that they are siphoning off the welfare system when, in fact, they're contributing mightily to the economy. They're buying cars, they're buying food, they're renting homes, they're buying homes, they're here, they're participating, they're taking jobs that U.S. citizens don't want.
This next question refers to one a great moment when we last had a Facebook Live interview with you in Cleveland. It is, and we're doing this in the Facebook Lounge, by the way. It's a really great setup, and thank you for Facebook. But Gary, did you ever find your phone the other day?
I did. Thank you very much. And I hate to admit this, but I did not have any. No, I didn't have any security on the phone. I mean, that's just crazy. So now it's on there. Now, if I lose it, at least okay. So I can go to Verizon, I can get a new one, and I won't have lost all my valuable data.
Talk a little bit. One of the reasons you were looking
Use
for
the microphone.
Oh, sorry. One of the reasons you were looking for your iPhone was that you were using it as an example of why we should be optimistic. Talk a little bit about that, because the story coming out of the Republican convention was, yeah, my God, this is the worst time ever to be alive. The Democrats here, I mean, it's interesting because they're saying, no, America, fuck yeah, this is a great country, except we're the most racist country in the world, and we cheat women at every workplace. And if Trump gets elected, the seas will boil and the skies will fill with sulfur. I mean, that was part of the message yesterday. You were pulling out your iPhone as a way of talking about, what's good about the world. So what were you trying to say with that?
Life has never been better in this country. We communicate better with one another. Our kids are smarter than ever. The number one law enforcement tool in the world right now is this guy right here. At which point, during the interview, I realized that I didn't have my phone, and I freaked out, and such is life. But I'm optimistic about the future, and yes, we have issues. So police shootings, police getting shot. But we are coming to a recognition of just how we have had our heads in the sand over discrimination, and we're coming to grips with it quicker than ever. So we'll resolve this. We will make life better. Here at the convention, getting on Oculus here, which apparently costs...
Which is in the Facebook Lounge. They have an Oculus Rift.
Oh my gosh, when you look at the ramifications of that going forward, that kids would be, from a virtual reality standpoint, be able to go anywhere in the world and visit, to be able to experience...
No, but that just gives rise to cyber terrorism, right? Then think ISIS can be right in your head. Isn't that the problem?
It's an optimistic future. Oh my gosh. And I see overnight that Facebook blew out their earnings, well, for good reason. Oh my gosh, this is the future. And it's exciting. It's optimistic. It's better than any of us ever imagined.
Do you worry about government getting in the way of technology?
Yes,
I mean, they've
do.
shut down Uber, they shut down Airbnb. Facebook in China and other countries gets shut down or limited.
So I think that the libertarian position on the internet, which is unique to all other politics, is libertarians don't want to touch the internet. Leave it like it is, which I view as equal opportunity for everybody. Anybody can stake out a course on the internet and brand new horizon.
And before we go to the next question that Matt will ask, related to this, yesterday in an interview with Bill Weld, he said that you would pardon Edward Snowden. Are you sticking by that?
Yes, I do, and I base that on the fact. Initially, when Edward Snowden came out and made these revelations, initially my belief was that, oh my gosh, there are going to be people put in harm's way. Maybe someone does get hurt. Seeing the movie Citizen 4 and recognizing how Edward Snowden went about this, releasing the information to higher powers that would judiciously release this information, I do view Edward Snowden in the hero category.
And we should be, I mean, this goes along with the idea of openness and the internet and equaling power and speech. I mean, we need to get serious about transparency in our government. Our government needs to have no secrets then.
I agree, and no one is really surprised by the revelations. And transparency, believing in transparency.
Question from Jamie Stein. I'm an active duty soldier who's supporting you. My two-part question is, how do you plan to reduce the defense budget without hurting unit organization and personnel, like benefits and pay? And two, what is your plan to reform the VA?
Well, benefits and pay, I think we could probably increase pay at the end of the day, but actually reducing overall personnel and support of that personnel, yeah, that's part of the equation. VA, look, commitments made to military, those that have served in the military, that is an obligation that there's no compromise whatsoever to meeting those obligations.
But how do you get there?
Well, the Pentagon itself says that we could reduce. Back to the VA.
Like, how do you? I mean, everyone says they want to help the VA, and Bernie Sanders says that.
The Congress spent $1 billion in the past year screwing it up.
My father, 2 summers ago, he's now close to 97 years old,
wow.
But he had, World War II, so he was in the VA. Talk about caring people. Talk about wonderful health care. Apparently the issues are being able to access that wonderful health care and that the VA gets stacked up. Well, to me, that's just a simple issuance of a VA medical card that could be utilized anywhere. The issues, I'm believing the issues have to do with access, the ability to get the care when you need it.
So, do you give people vouchers to visit private doctors, or what? Or do you
all the above? Well, back to I've been really vocally opposed to the insurance model when it comes to healthcare, believing that insurance to cover ourselves for ongoing medical need is just a crazy notion. We would have insurance to cover ourselves for catastrophic injury and illness, but if we could pay as you go, I think healthcare would be 1/5 the cost of what it currently is. Anyway.
You got endorsed this week by Marvin Bush. Are you getting geared up for the Neil Bush endorsement?
Well, I hope a lot of people come out and endorse, and look, you don't immediately come out and endorse. You say, hey, I'm looking at these guys as an alternative, and there are a lot of people saying that right now. And I absolutely appreciate those that are in elected office not being able to cross that line. I very much appreciate those that have held elective office being able to cross that line. So just saying I'm going to consider voting for these guys, Johnson, Weld, that's a big step.
And at this point, Marvin Bush, we should point out, is one of George W. Bush's brothers. And was there another? I mean,
there's Marvin, there's Neil.
And there's likely a likely outcome that you will have gotten more votes from the Bush family than Jeb Bush did by the end of all this.
And a fan of Jeb. I tell you, we served together. I thought I was very, very impressed with Jeb, and it's a shame that didn't. Well, if Jeb were the nominee right now, I don't know as we would be getting nearly the attention that we're getting.
Kyle Winters asks, as president, how would you handle gun control and the Second Amendment? Should there be more restrictions on the types of guns a private citizen can purchase?
I support the Second Amendment. I don't believe that there should be more restrictions. We're talking about assault weapons right now. Well, assault weapons is just a semi-automatic rifle that encompasses 30 million rifles. If we want to have a higher incarceration rate in this country, just make semi-automatic rifles illegal. About half the people that own those rifles will hand them in, and the other half, made up of 99.999% of people that are law-abiding, we're going to make criminals out of them.
Let me, very quickly, though, people worry about, even though gun violence and gun crime is at historic lows, people worry about that. What do you do with situations like the Orlando shooting?
Well,
or how do you prevent those or limit those? Well,
I think unlike other politicians that always somehow have a solution to that, we all recognize that anybody who's bent on killing themselves, anyone who's bent on destruction, mass destruction, the guy who the truck driving through a crowd of thousands. Isn't that a situation that exists in this country in 10,000 different places every single day? Look, these things are going to happen. Can we prudently try and address this? Well, in the case of the Orlando shooter, the FBI interviewed the guy 3 times as President of the United States. I would love to know what transpired between the FBI and this guy, and why obviously the system worked up to the point that it no longer worked. Well, how might it have gone forward and potentially that this would not have happened? I don't have those answers, but as President of the United States, I'd certainly call that meeting right off the bat.
Question from Adrian Sinner-Dorsch. What do you think about the Black Lives Matter movement?
I think it's completely relevant. I think that we have had our heads in the sand, that police have a bias against blacks, and that's reflected in the war on drugs, where if you are arrested, there's a 4 times more likelihood that you will go to jail, and I think it's also reflected in shooting. There's a 5 times more likelihood if you're black that you'll be shot by a police officer. And that's just a fact. So what are the common threads? Department of Justice, Federal Department of Justice. What are the common threads? Best practices? You know, that's Dallas. Best practices. Well, police got shot in Dallas, but what are they doing in Dallas that's right? What are they doing in areas where it's the worst? Albuquerque being one of those. I know that the Department of Justice came in, had recommendation in Albuquerque because of so many shootings, and I know that those recommendations are being followed through on. So federal government oversight, just pointing out the common threads of good and bad, and communicate those.
When you were in Cleveland for the Republican convention, you walked around and talked to a lot of people, including when we were talking with you, and had some pretty positive responses from delegates. Can you characterize your interactions with delegates there, and have you walked around enough here to actually interact with some Democrats?
Haven't walked around here at all. The observation I will make right off the top is that Democrats start later than Republicans. Not a bad thing. There's no judgment there, just fact, just an observation. But in Cleveland, at least 500 people came up to me to say that they were going to vote for me and Bill Weld. Oh. A dozen of those had on full Trump regalia, and not one negative comment. Not even negative inflection like, "What are you doing here?" Not even that.
It's funny because just outside here we saw Jill Stein walking through the halls here, and she had a lot of support in the building, especially among the Bernie Sanders people who are upset about the way they've been treated this week. But she also got, "Get out of this building," a lot of like vociferous, have your own damn convention, what are you doing here type of reaction. You got nothing, not even a hint of that anywhere in Cleveland among Republicans?
In Cleveland. And I am trying to fly low, and as I was in Cleveland, trying to be very respectful, and as I am here, I am very respectful of the fact that this is the Democrat National Convention and that Hillary is the nominee. I just hope to be able to take them on in November.
Hey, a lot of people ask this question. Do you think you take more support from Democrats or Republicans? Years ago, it used to always be, well, libertarians will siphon off Republican votes and allow Democrats to win. But polls both a couple of years ago when Robert Sarvis was running for office in Virginia showed him taking more votes from the Democrat at the time, Terry McAuliffe, in a gubernatorial race. And recent polls show you seeming to take more support from Hillary. Do you agree with that, and what do you think explains it?
I think it's really 50-50, and yeah, you're right about more support currently, but not by much. So you really can't even measure it. I do think that the two-party system is broken, that nothing is being spoiled here with my run for president. It's neither.
The two-party duopoly is, though, right? Because, you're taking votes from somebody, right?
Well, by spoiling it, it's a party that needs spoiling, really. This is not representative of most Americans, and it's just a fact.
Hillary Clinton is speaking tonight, and the focus is going to be on her. She can reintroduce herself to Americans after only 40 years in the public eye. I know you've sort of wanted to walk back she's a wonderful public servant that you said on CNN as a opening characterization. But can you just describe what you think about her politics, her ideas about policy? What are the defects in them? What are the positive attributes, if there are any?
Well, if I could walk back the statement on CNN to describe Hillary Clinton, I would say that Hillary's beholden, that she is the establishment. Is anything going to change if Hillary's president? Yes, government's going to try and be a bigger part in all of our lives. I believe that. I think that's the things that she's saying, and that's a generalization, but I think it's a factual generalization. So if government's going to be a bigger part of our life, it's going to cost us more. Taxes are going to go up. And neither Trump or Clinton want to address the entitlements. Neither Trump or Clinton want to address Social Security. It's a fiscal cliff out there. And if we're going to continue to put our heads in the sand over it, there will be a day of reckoning. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be inflation. That's what it's going to be.
So what do you do? Because one of the main things that you guys, both you and Governor Weld, you're pitching to millennials, to younger people. Look, you're in a situation, you're in a system that's not going to be there when you need it to retire. You're paying into a system for health care for wealthy old people that is busting the bank, and everything will be gone by the time you get there. The buffet will be, the chafing trays will be rolled up, there will be some crumbs. What do you do to address that in a way that speaks to young people specifically, but also doesn't scare the depends off of older people?
That there will be a safety net, that government will be the provider of last resort, and that I think it is desirable on the parts of all, and that it does need to be around. And right now, there have to be some structural adjustments. Spending has to be decreased. That means drawing new lines of eligibility. Right. That's what it amounts to. Yeah, lines of eligibility.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but this has been under my skin since it came out.
You've never been bothered by interrupting.
That is
never,
true, actually.
I'm sorry.
You know what? I'm talking. Okay. But when Bernie Sanders, said one of the ways, as Matt was talking about, that Hillary Clinton bought him off was by saying, okay, we're going to give free in-state college tuition to kids who live in households that make $125,000 a year, and it's like, at what point do people making six figures become charity cases? Especially for the average in-state college tuition is about $8 or $9 grand. I mean, is this the America that you're going to get behind?
I don't think anybody genuinely believes that things are free. Somebody has to pay for them. And so we're not eking out that course, that free comes with a cost, and the ultimate cost will be the accompanying inflation that goes along with this, and that's going to be really ugly. That's going to be a head jerk.
Question from somebody, but I don't see it, is what do you think of the DNC leak? So that question's from John Chemnitz. Shout out to John Chemnitz.
Well, no surprise, but surprising and entertaining also.
Do you worry about the potential Russian angle?
Do I worry about it?
It was hacked. They were hacked by Russia.
Well, I think that may be a reality, and I think as President of the United States, I think that I'd love to have the president, I'd love to have the government be more transparent about just what hacking does involve. I read an interesting story the other day that hacking really, on the part of governments, in this case, the hacking works to manipulate, in this case, the U.S. political system.
Are you pledging to keep your personal AOL address and use it as President of the United States?
Am I pledging to do that? That might be contrary to, that might be the boat that Hillary got into, right? Yes. Yeah, no, I really want to obey these laws.
We did that one.
I didn't have a chance to argue with you about this when we talked last time, but there's been a lot of talk with Putin and with Trump about whether or not we should defend the Baltic states, who are members of NATO, and we have Article 5 duties to defend them should Russia invade or do something bad there. Do you think that we have those duties, and is that a good idea?
Well, that we should, getting elected President of the United States, I'm going to honor all treaties and obligations. Count on me to do that coming into office. Examining those relationships going forward, I think that those relationships need to be put on the table. Do we really want to go to war over the Baltic states? And keep in mind the USSR broke up because of Russia. Russia's inability to sustain all of that. So you can argue that they're not as democratic as they could, but there have been reforms made in Russia. Do we have to be Russia's ally? No, but we certainly don't want to have to. We certainly don't have to poke them in the nose either.
But functionally, if you're going to re-examine the treaty obligations with the Baltic states, that can only go one direction. They want to be in NATO. They absolutely want that protection.
Well, and that's the examination that needs to take place. And on our side, do we really want to go to nuclear war over the Baltic states? Do we really want to do that?
What about a shooting war? Which is more likely? Well. Or what about Europe?
There's no chance right now that Russia involves itself in the Baltic states. They've got enough economic problems right now that the reality is that they're not.
One of the arguments for why they would involve themselves in the Baltics, because to keep people's minds off of the economic problems at home. But, well, to put it slightly differently, do you see reconfiguring NATO so that it's more European countries defending Europe, or that they're paying a higher share?
Well, that part of what Donald Trump is saying, and getting U.S. troops out of NATO, I mean, in a heartbeat, I think that can be reestablished. But to have a presence of 100,000 troops in Europe, that just from a common sense standpoint doesn't make all that much sense.
Matt, you want to ask one more question?
Yeah, let's ask a Chris Cuomo question. Give a 5-word, not 1 word, a description of the Democratic convention that you've seen so far. It could be 10 words.
Okay, well, just one more.
Well, I want to be respectful. I do. So a lot of really caring people here that believe in a Democrat way of doing things. Same on the Republican side. Look, I'm here making a pitch. Put me in the debates and listen to what might actually be mainstream.
Well, thank you. Governor Gary Johnson, Libertarian Party nominee. Thank you to Facebook Live for allowing us to use this space.
Thank you.
And Nick Gillespie. I'm Matt Welch. Bye.
Bye.